There are moments that arrive so quietly that almost no one notices them at first. They do not announce themselves with noise or spectacle. They simply begin, like the first light touching the horizon before anyone realizes the night is ending. This is one of those moments. Don't skip, because what is slowly unfolding around your connection is far more beautiful than it first appears. While you have been wondering whether your presence is truly remembered, someone has been carrying thoughts of you into places they never expected. A smile appeared today without warning. A memory returned at the most ordinary moment. A simple object, a familiar song, a passing conversation, somehow everything pointed back to you. They tried to continue as though nothing had changed, yet something inside them refused to stay silent. What makes this different is not the surprise itself. It is the reason behind it. For the first time, they are beginning to understand that the greatest moments are not created by grand gestures. They are created by quiet decisions made when nobody is watching. That realization has been growing inside them day after day, and with every passing hour it becomes harder for them to ignore. They keep replaying little memories they once overlooked. Words you spoke casually now carry unexpected meaning. The kindness you offered without expecting anything in return has become impossible for them to forget. They are beginning to see that what felt ordinary then was quietly becoming unforgettable. Strangely enough, they haven't told anyone the whole story. Not because they are hiding something, but because they are protecting something they have only recently begun to understand. Some feelings need silence before they are ready for words. They know that once spoken aloud, everything changes. So instead of explaining it to others, they have been letting the idea grow in private, wondering if the moment is finally close enough to reach for it. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. There was a moment recently when they almost acted. Everything inside them said, now. Their heart raced. Their thoughts became clearer than ever before. But at the very last second, they paused, not from doubt, but because they wanted what comes next to feel unforgettable. They are no longer thinking about whether they should surprise you. They are thinking about how to make that surprise reflect everything they have been unable to say with simple words. You may have noticed small changes without realizing what they meant. Perhaps the timing of certain events felt unusual. Perhaps unexpected peace arrived for no obvious reason. Perhaps you felt an unexplainable sense that something gentle was drawing closer. These are not dramatic signs. They are quiet reminders that meaningful moments often begin long before anyone can see them clearly. The sweetest surprises are rarely created overnight. They are carefully built from countless unseen choices. And there is one detail that changes everything, a detail they have shared with no one. It is not expensive. It is not flashy. Yet the meaning behind it is so deeply personal that even imagining your reaction has filled them with hope. They keep asking themselves the same question over and over. Will this finally show them what my heart has struggled to express all this time? That question has stayed with them longer than they expected. The story is only beginning, because what happened after that quiet decision transformed everything they believed was possible, and the next moment reveals the one unexpected step they never imagined they would have the courage to take. Something shifted the instant they stopped trying to create the perfect moment and simply started listening to what their heart had been whispering all along. That quiet whisper carried them somewhere unexpected. It wasn't toward a grand celebration or an elaborate plan. It led them back to the smallest details about you, the details most people would have forgotten. Don't skip, because this is where the sweetest part of the story begins to reveal itself. They remembered the way your eyes brighten when something sincere is said. They remembered how you value thoughtfulness far more than appearances. And for the first time, they realized the surprise they wanted to give you could never be measured by its size, it had to be measured by its meaning. They found themselves smiling at memories that once seemed ordinary. A conversation they almost overlooked suddenly became unforgettable. A simple laugh echoed in their mind long after the moment had passed. Even silence became meaningful because they finally understood that some of the strongest connections are built in the spaces where no words are needed. They never expected these quiet reflections to change them so deeply, yet every memory gently pointed them in the same direction, toward you. What surprised them even more was how naturally everything began falling into place. Doors they thought were closed suddenly seemed open. Conversations happened at exactly the right time. Small opportunities appeared without being forced. None of it felt dramatic. It felt peaceful, as though every step was encouraging them to move forward with confidence instead of hesitation. They stopped asking whether they should prepare something special. Instead, they began asking what would make you feel truly seen, truly appreciated, and quietly understood. Stay till the end. Because something important is waiting for you. There came a moment when they picked up something that reminded them of you. They held it for several minutes without saying a word. It wasn't because the object itself was extraordinary. It was because they imagined the expression on your face when you realized why they had chosen it. That single thought stayed with them longer than they expected. They even changed their original plan, deciding that the surprise deserved one more personal touch. Something only the two of you would fully understand. But while they were adding that final detail, something completely unexpected happened. A message, a conversation, or perhaps even a chance encounter brought them one final realization they hadn't been looking for. It answered a question they had quietly carried for far too long, and the answer gave them the confidence to take the next step. What they decided to do after that changed the surprise in a way neither of you could have imagined. And the next chapter begins at the exact moment they finally stopped waiting and started moving toward you with a heart that had nothing left to hide. There is a beautiful difference between planning a surprise and becoming the kind of person who is ready to give one. Somewhere along the way, they stopped focusing on what they could place in your hands, and started thinking about what they wanted to leave in your heart. That quiet change became the beginning of something neither of you could have predicted. Don't skip, because the next few moments reveal why this story feels so different from anything that came before. For a while, they believed they had to find the perfect words before reaching out. Every sentence they imagined sounded incomplete. Every message felt too small for everything they wished you could understand. Then, almost unexpectedly, they realized that sincerity speaks louder than perfection ever could. That realization lifted a weight they had been carrying for longer than they admitted, and suddenly the distance between hesitation and action no longer seemed impossible. As they reflected on everything that had led them here, one memory refused to fade. It wasn't the loudest memory. It wasn't the most dramatic. It was a quiet moment when you showed kindness without expecting anything in return. At the time, they smiled and moved on. But now they see that moment differently. They understand that genuine care leaves an imprint long after the conversation ends. It stays hidden until the heart is finally ready to recognize its value. Something important is waiting for you, because while they were gathering the final pieces of this surprise, they noticed a small detail they had overlooked before. It made them pause. They smiled to themselves, almost laughing at how obvious it suddenly seemed. The sweetest surprise could never be built around impressing you. It had to remind you of something you've always deserved to feel, appreciated, understood, and deeply valued for simply being yourself. From that moment forward, every choice became more intentional. They weren't rushing anymore. They wanted every detail to carry meaning. A familiar place entered their thoughts. A favorite memory quietly returned. Even the timing began to matter, because they wanted the moment to arrive naturally, without feeling forced. Piece by piece, what once seemed like a simple idea was becoming something much more personal. Then came the unexpected turning point. Someone close to them noticed the quiet excitement they could no longer hide and asked a simple question: "Why do you seem happier lately?" They paused before answering, because the truth surprised even them. They weren't excited about a plan. They were excited about the possibility of seeing your genuine smile again. That answer stayed with them long after the conversation ended, confirming what their heart had been trying to tell them all along. And just when they believed everything was finally ready, one final unexpected detail appeared, so meaningful, so perfectly timed, that it transformed the surprise into something even more unforgettable. And what they chose to do next would become the moment they would remember long after the surprise itself was over. Just when everything seemed perfectly arranged, life offered one last unexpected pause, not to delay the moment, but to make it even more meaningful. There are times when the heart quietly asks for a little more patience, not because the destination is uncertain, but because the story is still gathering the final pieces that will make it unforgettable. Don't skip. Because what happened next revealed something they had never admitted, even to themselves. While everyone around them carried on with ordinary conversations, their thoughts kept drifting back to you. They would hear someone laugh and wonder if it sounded anything like yours. They would pass a familiar place and imagine what it would feel like if you were standing there beside them. It wasn't distraction. It was recognition. They were beginning to understand that your presence had become part of the way they experienced even the simplest moments. Then came a quiet evening unlike any other. With no one watching, they sat alone and asked themselves a question they had been avoiding for far too long. If I had one chance to make them feel truly special, what would I do? The answer didn't arrive immediately. It unfolded gently, memory after memory, until one beautiful idea settled into their heart. It wasn't elaborate. It wasn't something meant to impress the world. It was something that could only matter because it belonged to the two of you. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As they began bringing that idea to life, they noticed something remarkable. Every small step they took filled them with a quiet joy they hadn't felt in a long time. They weren't nervous anymore. They weren't wondering whether it would be enough. For the first time, they simply hoped the surprise would remind you of one thing, that you have always been worth thoughtful effort, even when you never asked for it. The closer the moment came, the more carefully they protected it. They resisted the urge to reveal hints. They smiled when people asked what had changed, offering only a gentle answer that satisfied no one's curiosity. Deep inside, they carried a secret that grew warmer with every passing day. It wasn't the surprise itself that made them smile, it was imagining the expression on your face when you finally realized how much care had gone into every tiny detail. But then something happened that they never planned for. A simple coincidence placed one last missing piece directly in front of them. It felt almost as if the story itself was quietly helping them complete what their heart had started. In that instant, they realized the surprise was no longer just a thoughtful gesture. It had become a reflection of everything they had been trying to express without finding the right words. And as they held that final piece in their hands, they made one silent promise to themselves, a promise that would completely change the way the surprise would unfold, because the very next step was one they had never been brave enough to take before. There is a quiet kind of courage that almost no one notices. It isn't loud enough to draw attention, yet it has the power to change everything. That was the kind of courage beginning to grow inside them now. It didn't appear all at once. It arrived one small decision at a time, each one bringing them closer to the moment they had imagined so many times before. Don't skip, because the heart of this story is only now beginning to reveal itself. They started looking at the world differently. Every sunrise reminded them that beautiful things never rush their arrival. Every peaceful evening reminded them that the most meaningful conversations often begin with a single honest sentence. They no longer wondered if the surprise would be appreciated. Instead, they wondered how they could make you feel the warmth they had been carrying in silence for so long. Then something unexpectedly beautiful happened. While organizing the final details, they came across a memory they thought had been forgotten forever. It wasn't hidden in a photograph or written inside a note. It lived quietly inside their heart, waiting for the right moment to return. Suddenly they remembered the exact way you encouraged someone without expecting recognition. They remembered how naturally you brought comfort into ordinary moments. That memory changed everything. It reminded them that your greatest gift has never been what you own or what you achieve, it has always been the peace people feel when they are around you. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. From that realization, the surprise took on an entirely new meaning. It was no longer about creating a perfect moment. It became an opportunity to reflect back the kindness you have quietly given to others without realizing how deeply it was noticed. Every thoughtful detail they added carried a simple message they hoped you would feel before a single word was spoken: you have been appreciated far more than you know. As the day drew closer, they rehearsed countless possibilities in their mind. They imagined your first smile. They imagined the brief moment of silence before understanding appeared in your eyes. They even imagined themselves becoming unexpectedly emotional, not because the plan was flawless, but because they knew this moment represented everything they had struggled to express for so long. Yet just when they believed nothing else could make the surprise more meaningful, one gentle conversation changed its direction completely. Someone shared a simple piece of wisdom with them. The sweetest surprises aren't remembered because they are unexpected. They're remembered because they make someone feel deeply understood. Those words settled into their heart, and from that instant forward, they quietly changed one final detail, one detail so personal that only you would recognize why it mattered. And as they placed that last piece exactly where it belonged, they realized the surprise was finally complete, or so they believed. Because only moments later, something completely unplanned appeared before them, something so perfectly timed that it transformed the entire experience into a memory neither of you would ever expect to forget. No one could have predicted that the final piece would arrive without being searched for. It appeared so naturally that, for a brief moment, they simply stood still, letting the meaning settle in. Sometimes the most beautiful additions to a story are never planned. They quietly find their own place. Don't skip, because this unexpected moment became the reason the surprise felt even more heartfelt than they had ever imagined. They looked at everything they had prepared and realized it was no longer just a collection of thoughtful details. It had become a reflection of a journey. Every choice carried a memory. Every small touch carried gratitude. Every quiet pause carried hope. They smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because it was genuine. And for the first time in a long while, being genuine felt more than enough. As the hours passed, their excitement became impossible to ignore. They caught themselves smiling for no reason. They found themselves replaying one question over and over again: what will their face look like in that first quiet second? It wasn't curiosity alone. It was anticipation wrapped in affection. They weren't hoping for applause. They were hoping for that gentle smile that says, without a single word, you remembered. Something important is waiting for you, because there was one final decision they had yet to make. It seemed small to everyone else, yet to them it meant everything. Should the surprise begin with words, or with silence? They imagined greeting you immediately. Then they imagined simply letting the moment speak for itself. Again and again, they changed their mind, until they realized the answer had been with them all along. The sweetest moments are never rushed. They breathe. They allow the heart to catch up before the voice begins. So they decided that when the time finally arrived, they would not fill the air with rehearsed sentences. They would simply let their eyes tell the story first. Every memory, every quiet hope, every thoughtful detail had already prepared the conversation long before either of you would say a single word. Then, almost as if the world wanted to add its own gentle touch, something familiar appeared. A song they hadn't heard in ages. A place connected to a cherished memory. A simple reminder that made them pause and smile. It felt like confirmation that this moment belonged exactly where it was, arriving neither too early nor too late. What they didn't realize was that while they were preparing this beautiful surprise, you were unknowingly preparing something within your own heart as well. Neither of you could see the full picture yet, but the two stories were quietly moving toward the same unforgettable moment. And just as they took one deep breath and decided, it's finally time, they noticed one last unexpected detail. Something so personal, so wonderfully familiar, that it changed the very first thing they were about to say, and that first sentence would become the beginning of a memory neither of you would ever stop smiling about. The heart has a remarkable way of recognizing a moment before the mind fully understands it. As they stood there, holding everything they had prepared, they felt an unexpected calm settle over them. It wasn't the calm of certainty that everything would unfold perfectly. It was the quiet confidence that, whatever happened next, it would come from a place of genuine care. Don't skip, because what followed became the part of the story they would replay in their heart again and again. For a brief moment, the world seemed to slow down. The sounds around them faded into the background, and only one thought remained clear. I hope they feel how deeply they are appreciated. That hope was stronger than nervousness. Stronger than doubt. It carried every memory, every smile, every silent wish that had quietly grown over time. They realized they weren't trying to create an unforgettable surprise anymore. They were trying to create an unforgettable feeling. Then they remembered something that made them stop in their tracks. Long ago, you had mentioned a tiny detail in passing, something so ordinary that most people would have forgotten it within minutes. But they hadn't forgotten. They had quietly carried it with them ever since. It became the final touch they had been searching for without even realizing it. Suddenly everything made sense. The surprise wasn't complete until it reflected not only what they felt, but what they had truly listened to. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As they carefully added that final personal detail, they couldn't help but smile. They imagined the exact moment you would notice it. Not immediately. But a few seconds later, when recognition gently settled in. That delayed smile, that quiet realization, meant more to them than any grand reaction ever could. It was proof that the smallest acts of attention often leave the deepest impression. The closer they came to seeing you, the more they understood something they had never fully appreciated before. The sweetest surprises are not about changing someone's day. They are about reminding someone who they have always been. They wanted you to feel seen for your kindness, your patience, your quiet strength, and the light you bring into ordinary moments without even trying. That was the real gift hidden inside every thoughtful choice they had made. Then, just before everything was about to unfold, an unexpected message reached them. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, almost effortless. Yet those few words brought a peaceful smile to their face because they answered one question they had quietly carried for so long. In that instant, every remaining hesitation disappeared. They no longer wondered whether this was the right time. Their heart already knew the answer. As they took their first step forward, something extraordinary happened, not because the world suddenly changed, but because they did. The fear of getting everything perfect faded away, replaced by the joy of simply sharing something sincere. And that quiet transformation became the greatest surprise of all. Yet the story had one final gentle twist waiting just ahead, because the very first thing you noticed wasn't the surprise they had carefully prepared. It was something about them that had changed completely, and that single realization would make the next moment more meaningful than either of you could have imagined.